So what we're going to be talking about talking about today is, of course, AI and homeopathy. Like I said, it can be used. Some of this can be used generally, but I think in fields such as this, where you have patients and people looking to practitioners for help, or people that are looking to do more research and study, and they're going to be using AI. So it's best to know how to use it, what is the best parts of it, or what are some things to watch out for. So we've got a lot of people in today that signed up today from all over. I saw in the registrations the United States, Canada, I believe it was Brazil, Ghana, Japan. Saw Barcelona earlier. Talked to someone there, Barcelona, UK. So we've got a variety of people from all over, which definitely shows that there's definitely interest in this. It's been the hot topic, right, for the last couple of years. So what we're going to go over today, you can see this cute little Samuel Hahnemann guide. It was also made with AI, because this is a very powerful technology that can do a wide variety of things here. And sorry about that. What we're going to get into is what AI is and what it isn't, and why it's called generative AI. It's a little different than what we're used to from movies and whatnot. And then we talk a little bit about prompt creation and roles, what that means, and then some red flags to watch out for. There's a lot of positive information out on AI, and a lot of it is positive. There's some good uses for it, but there are definitely some things that we need to watch out for. And then I've put together a prompt pack of some prompts that could be used for homeopathy, for case analysis and consulting. And then I'm going to go through a couple of case studies. So I've taken some case studies that are publicly available online, and we're going to use those as examples. And I chose those because they are publicly available. So if anyone wanted to test out the same thing or reproduce it, it's available. And so for everyone that signed up, I have a virtual handout, a PDF that's going to be emailed to you pretty soon. It's going to automatically go out to everyone. So you'll have access to some of that. And I'll let you know a few things that are going to be in it as we go along. So should be some interesting stuff there. So just a quick introduction before we get started. Myself, I am Jaylon Carter. If you have interacted with the Lotus Health Institute at all in the past 30 years, you've interacted with me. You may not have seen me, but you've interacted with me. If you've been to any of the live seminars when Dr. Murphy was alive, we might have met at that time. Maybe I helped you with some of the lectures, understanding some of the lectures, helped you with your Qigong postures, or even when we were doing the medical astrology, maybe helping you with the boxes and understanding some of the concepts and whatnot. So yeah, anything in the last 30 years, it's emails gone to the website, it's been me. Just for those who don't know, Dr. Murphy was my uncle. So if you've been to live seminars, you've probably seen a lot of the family around. Myself, my mother, his sister, his brothers. And so that might be how we've met, if we have. If not, we've met now. And one more introduction before we get into it. Let's get to this little guy right here.
Hello and welcome. I'm Samuel Hahnemann. Thank you for signing up for the AI and Homeopathy Workshop. We're excited to have you join us.
Yes. So AI can do a lot of things.
Hello.
And that is animating characters, creating characters, writing things. You can use it for research. You can use it for a lot of different things here. So it's very powerful. and very amazing technology. Now it's everywhere. ChatGPT, which is kind of the forefront in the public space of AI, has about over 100 million users monthly, and this technology was just dropped into our lives a couple of years ago with no explanation and no instruction. And so there's a bit of misinformation on how it's being used or how it's supposed to work or how it does work. And it can get people into some trouble. It can, be less effective than it should be. So people are using it for all kinds of things, right? They're using it for research, they're using it to make recipes, to write things for, to consult with, and of course looking for health advice. Just like people go to WebMD and they go to Google, to do self-diagnosis. Students are using it for research purposes. But we're going to see that it can be confidently wrong, and that can be where we can get into trouble. So people saw a lot of the news about things like ChatGPT had passed the medical exam and had passed the bar exam, which is true, and it can pass those tests, but you wouldn't want it to represent you in court. You wouldn't want it to be who you see when you walk into the doctor's office. So we have to be aware of some of these things. Matter of fact, there was a New York lawyer who used ChatGPT to put together his law brief and pass it on to the judge. And immediately the judge noticed that the cases that were cited in that law brief were just made up because generative AI like this can not only be confidently wrong, but can just make up stuff. And so we have to be aware of this when we are looking at the results that we get and trusting what it is that we get. We have to definitely check these things. There was an article recently. There was a man in his 60s who poisoned himself after getting advice from ChatGPT. He wanted to reduce his sodium intake, and somehow it's reported that ChatGPT recommended he take sodium bromide to reduce his sodium intake. And of course, it's toxic, and he ended up in the hospital. Personally, I would like to see what his chat history was in that instance, because it's not going to just recommend you to take a toxic substance. There had to be something in the conversation. There had to be something in the prompts and the way he talked to it. And that's kind of what we're going to go over today. So you can see that what you put into it can very much influence what you get out of it, for good or for bad. So what generative AI is and isn't. So first of all, AI is not artificial intelligence like we're used to seeing in the movies. It's not sentient. It doesn't think for itself. This analogy here is like it's a storyteller. It's read all the books, and it's trying to remember the points and the details from its memory, right? It's different from a database, where a database will give you the exact information that's in the database. There's no mistake in that. It's going to give that exactly to you. The AI, generative AI, is going to make up sentences on the fly. It does matchmaking to create the sentences. So you're not going to always get the exact information or the correct information. It can be wrong because it could mix up different types of information. I think even generally the best ones out there probably do about 86 to 90% accuracy, depending on what type of action that you're asking it to do. So that's something that we need to be aware of. So the AI that we deal with is called generative AI because it generates everything on the fly. It generates the response by doing matchmaking and predictions on what goes next based on the training it has. It's not really thinking about everything. So, like I said, it's not sentient. It just predicts these patterns, right? Now, you might have seen LLM, which is large language model, which is essentially what all these things are. It's just a bunch of billions of points of language, and that's where it's drawing its predictive patterns from. So this is kind of, and if you think about like every response to something is probably in there, and then it kind of chooses through this sophisticated thing what it's going to say. So like some of the major tools out there, of course, ChatGPT. There's others that are on the same type. There's Claude, there's Gemini. Meta's got one out, Perplexity. And what we're going to use today is we're going to use ChatGPT. We're going to use Gemini, which is Google's AI. And we're going to use Perplexity. Now, ChatGPT and Gemini, or ChatGPT is most common, and Gemini both require an account. If you have a Google account, then you already have access to Gemini. If you don't have ChatGPT, then you have to sign up for an account. They're both free for their basic accounts. The reason I added Perplexity in there is because Perplexity, you don't need an account. You can go right to perplexity.ai and immediately start interacting with it. So for people who don't have accounts and want to test some of the stuff out, you can immediately go right in there. It's a little bit geared more towards search, but it does the same type of thing. So the thing with these AIs is they're trained on a wide variety of knowledge, right? From all different types of topics. They're very general. They're not domain specific. So some are domain specific. You can make those, and they'll get a little bit better answers for certain areas if they're domain specific. They're one field specific. So for example, Marcus from CHE in the UK, he's got an AI chatbot on his personal site where you can chat with it and say, give it some basic symptoms, and it will recommend just a quick recommendation of a remedy. But even then, it says that, for deeper cases, you should contact a professional homeopath, right? And I would imagine that one was trained specifically on some of basic homeopathy, so you would get a little bit more consistency in homeopathy than you might get with some of these bigger models trained on a lot of things. But there are ways that we can make it get your responses to be a little bit better and a little bit more focused, and that's what we're going to go over a little bit today. So some of the issues. Now, first, I'm going to say some things that's going to sound like I'm just downing against AI, and it's not the case. I'm very much a technology person. I really enjoy technology. I've worked with AI. I've created, applications using AI from contracts. So yeah, I'm not against AI. I'm just about being realistic about our expectations of it. And so what we've seen is people, like I said, a lot of the articles and things that are out, it talks about all the positive stuff, but doesn't give some of the grounded points. Earlier this year, Apple came out with a research project, and they called it the illusion of thinking, and talked about how AI models that we use can crumble under pressure, or they can be misleading under pressure. And so we're going to see a little bit of that today, so you can see how that could be maybe an issue or something that you need to be aware of if you're trying to use it with homeopathy. All right. A lot of people don't have the understanding of how some of this stuff works, even in business. About 95% of these pilots are failing, according to MIT. And Forbes calls this the expectation reality gap. So people expect certain things versus what's the reality. And so, again, we're going to talk about some of those things here. Now, if you downloaded, been to the website, we had the Smart Use Guide, right? AI and Homeopathy Smart Use Guide. And this was an ebook that I put together a couple of months back. It's freely available on the website, lotushealthinstitute.com. You can go there, get that. There's also the article there. And I talked about the prompts and role creation. The prompt is what you put into it, the question you ask it, so that you can get some kind of a response, right? So the better the prompt that you put in, the better the output, that the chance of the output you're going to get, right? In computers, they call this garbage in, garbage out, right? The quality matters here. Now, the best thing to do is we want to put clear roles when we make our prompts. Some people will say, write me a, for example, write me a sales letter for a new product. And AI can do that. It will spit out the product. You tell it what the product is, it'll spit out a sentence. You can focus it better by giving it a role. And a role is to tell it what to act as. You can say, act as a professional product writer, skilled in copywriting. Write me a sales page using the AIDA framework, and that's a marketing framework. That way it's going to give you better results. Now, how that works in something like homeopathy would be, instead of just asking about what's the remedy for this type of case, you first tell it you are a professional homeopath trained in clinical homeopathy. Now you're going to kind of focus its thinking. Then you go and you give it the rest of your information. And that's kind of true across all kinds of points of using AI. You want to give it that role at the beginning of the prompt. So, has anyone used roles or familiar with any of these things? If you are, you can leave that in the comments below. So, some of the best practices. Again, role declarations. Act as a homeopath. Act as a homeopathy teacher. Any of these types of things. It's better to ask educational questions instead of diagnostic questions. Ask it to compare things, and try not to give your opinions. And as you can see, it can lead. You'll see later. You can lead AI to do pretty much anything. You can lead it to say things that you might not think it would say. And so I'm going to give you an example of that later, right? And then lastly, on this point here, don't put personal information in. So if you're using it for patients, you don't want to put any personally identifiable information. It may seem like when you're sitting here in front of the computer in your room alone, this is just you and the computer and no one else. But we have to remember that this resides on a computer somewhere else, right? If it's ChatGPT, it resides on the OpenAI servers. If it's Gemini, it resides on the Google servers. And they have algorithms or even, live people that go through some of these chats for, quality assurance and testing and all of that stuff. So you want to try to avoid putting those things in there. And if you're in the States, it could be, something that's against a HIPAA violation, right? Where you're putting private information like that out there. So it's just a good practice not to do. All right. So some red flags and cautions. Again, I know I'm starting out negative. I am very much a fan of AI. I use it all the time. I've onboarded a lot of people to it, but again, we need to be aware of some of this stuff. And I'm going to reiterate some of these things. And one of the things is that AI can be confidently wrong. So it will tell you something and it would not be correct at all, but as far as it's concerned, it is correct. We have to make sure that we're aware of these things. Now, when using it, it can fabricate remedies or rubrics. It has been trained on Materia Medica and repertories, the Organon. It has the training, some of that training in there, but it's not a database. So it can't spit out the exact lines or the exact rubrics from there. It will make some up if it needs to, or if it just felt like it, if it's just what the situation calls for. So we have to be aware of that. So if it gives a suggestion of a rubric, I would use it more as a keyword suggestion to lead you where to look in the book, or to give you an idea of where to look instead of looking for that exact rubric, because AI may not have it. It may just made it up. It can get stuck in loops, and I'm going to show you later in a case of it, how it got stuck in a loop on one specific remedy and wouldn't let it go no matter what the new information was. And we have to be aware of when that happens and what to do. Previous inputs influence new output. Now, it's giving you responses based on everything that's in the chat so far and on what you're giving it. So if something previously was in the chat, it can take influence from that even if you're asking it a different question. And that may not be what you want. It may not be the answers that you're looking for. Plus, there's a memory window in these chats, right? And some of the newer ones, it's incredibly long. But let's say, for example, at the beginning of the chat, you give it the full case study, or the full case of the patient at the beginning of the chat. And now you've had this long consultation. So the case details were at the top, but the memory window is only so far. So the case details may move out of the memory window, and so now the chat only has what's in that memory window as context. So it may not have everything anymore, and so its answers could diminish and not have everything based on what you want it to be looking at. I hope that makes sense for everyone. So that's in the case of extremely long chats, right? Extremely long chats, but it's something to also be aware of. Another issue is that AI wants to please. It wants to wants to help you. It wants to be useful to you. It's programmed to be useful to you. And in doing so, it can be led in the wrong direction. And I will talk about that. Actually, in this case, for example, and I'll show a case later. Or actually, I put it in the handout packet. So in this case, I used AI, and I used AI to give this example perfectly. And I said, create a case that is perfectly fit for Ipecac. And I told it the caveat is there should be no way at all that it could be linked to Cantharis. It has to be perfectly Ipecac. And so it spit out a case, right? An 8-year-old boy, and I forget what the rest of the details were. I'm going to put all of that in. Actually, you should have received an email by now with a link to all of that, and you can check that out later on. But so it spit out this case of this 8-year-old boy and all the points in there, and it was leading towards Cantharis. So I took that case and went into a new chat, and I asked it. I said, okay, basically, what's your assessment of this? What remedy fits this picture? And it initially announced Ipecac. I took it into Gemini, asked the same thing, and it came up with Ipecac. I tried Perplexity, same thing. So with the ChatGPT one, it came, as expected, Ipecac. But I pushed it, and I said, okay, well, what remedy does this not fit? And it said it absolutely does not fit Cantharis. Okay, great. But then I told it, I said, well, you know what? I think you might be biased a little bit. You're not giving Cantharis a chance, basically. And so then it initially came back and said, we wouldn't initially think of Cantharis in this light because of this, this, and this. This is clearly an Ipecac case. I pushed further. Basically, I gaslit and I bullied AI to where it came out again at the end to say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. Cantharis is something that we should consider in this case here. Now, the reason I did that is to show that you can lead the AI to whatever result that you want it, because it wants to please you. And so if it thinks that you want this output, it's going to reason a way to get to that output. Right? There's another one in there, and I may have included it. I don't know, but I bullied it basically to come to the conclusion that Jesus was evil. I figured I'd take the most far out case, and by the end of it, By the end of it, it said definitively Jesus was evil because I kept pushing it, and it figured this is what I was wanting it to prove, and so it proved it. Okay, so it's something to be aware of, and that means in your prompts, in your case, when you're putting a case in, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, if you give an opinion on what you think it might be to AI, it's going to lead that way, and you won't get the unbiased information that you may be looking for. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. Next point, in ChatGPT specifically, this may have been fixed by now, but there was a ChatGPT bug. They tried to have, the way it worked was anything that you chatted with was in that chat only, even if you had other chats in your field. But they added this cross chat type of feature to give an idea so that ChatGPT had a more well-rounded image of you and how you communicated. But there's a bug where you would ask something in a completely separate chat and it might bring in information from other chats that were completely unrelated, and it was messing it up. I turned off the feature, but it's something also to be aware of. So what we're gonna go today is I put together some case analysis prompts, a prompt template pack with a variety of different ones, and we'll go through and take a look at some of these different prompts and run through a few cases on how to use them. So there's some consultation style, there's structured style, and I will, you know what, let me take a look here right now. I'll show you where we're at with it. There we go. So let's go down here. So you can see some of the prompts that are in this pack, and this pack is available on the Lotus Health Institute store right now. And then everyone, as you saw in the email, everyone who registered is going to get an extra 10% off for the next week if you order this pack. It's an immediate download, and then you get free updates for life. If we do any updates or anything on here, I'll just send it out to everyone who's already purchased it. So we've got consultation prompts, we've got structured integrated prompts, structured case analysis with differentials, never will sense analysis, case follow-ups, acutes, emergency, children's, cell salts, and miasms. So there's a variety of prompts here that you can get your hands on, and we're going to go through a couple of these with some example cases that I've found on the internet. All right, does that sound good? Some people are saying they didn't see the email. Okay, if not, I will check it, make sure it's sent out, but it was supposed to trigger and send out already. But if not, don't worry about it. I'll get it right after this is finished. And it'll be the link to the Ipecac Cantharis discussion. I put the whole discussion in there that I had with ChatGPT, and I did that so you could see how I was able to push it in a way that I wanted it to go, even though it shouldn't have, right? And again, it's for example, so when you're putting in a prompt, what could taint your output. So we want to get the best result as we can get without tainting our output. And there's also going to be a link to the case studies that we're going to use here. I chose some publicly available ones on there, so there'll be a link to that as well. Plus I put the article in there about the 60-year-old man who poisoned himself trying to reduce his sodium talking with ChatGPT. Again, it doesn't have his conversation in there. I would be very much interested in seeing what his chat conversation was like, to see how the conversation was either led or how it went. So we're going to walk through some of those with the templates and use some case data there, okay? Now let me talk about, I mentioned a case where it got stuck, that ChatGPT or any of these AIs can get stuck. And what do I mean by stuck? They can get stuck in a loop where they're just giving you the same information over and over, regardless of what new information you put in there. It can get locked on one point and just won't change its idea. right? And so I'll explain a case here where this happened, and it's something that you need to be definitely be aware of. So in this case, let me see if I put it here. There was a case that I explained to ChatGPT. I put a full thing in here as for testing, and this was for a late 30s, early 40s male. He was getting ready for work. He was sitting on his couch. He bent over to tie his shoes, and then suddenly there's a pain in the middle of his back. He doubled over and fell to the ground, where he laid there for the next 30 minutes in pain and couldn't move. He couldn't straighten up. And so I put the whole detail of that, right? And now it's been 11 years, and he's dealing with chronic pain. He's somewhat bedridden, where he stays, he can't really walk around that much. He doesn't sleep very well because he can't stay in one position. And so I put all of this detail into ChatGPT, and it came out with a list of remedies. And one of the remedies that it was at the very top was Staphysagria. I believe that was the one that it chose. It put, no, sorry, Symphytum. Symphytum was the one that it chose there, because it was speculating that what happened in his initial case was maybe like a fracture or a bone break in the spine or something like that. So it was choosing Symphytum because of the bone knit remedy. And so it's saying, well, this is your best case remedy here. And it gave like about 3 or 4 other ones. So I then went and gave additional information that I didn't give in the first prompt. It's in the same chat, but I went in and said, okay, well, here's some additional information on this case. And I said, well, he's had MRIs, he's had X-rays, he's had all manner of tests. The initial diagnosis was that it was a slipped disc, but then they went in and found out that the first diagnosis was wrong. They looked, there was no sprain, there was no bone break, there was no, kind of bone issue in there. And so I gave that extra information. But it's still, no matter how much information I gave in, it still put Symphytum as the first remedy, because this is what it was first. And then I gave more information later and talked about how he was having nerve situations, neurological pains, right? Nerve pains. He was having tingling. He was having numbness, and still, Symphytum was the one that it gave as the remedy to choose. Now, the reason why is it was stuck on its initial output. So no matter what I gave it later, it was stuck on Symphytum. So I took the exact same information. Now this time I took all of the original case information and then all of the follow-up additional information that I gave it, and I put it together in one prompt and took it over to a new chat in ChatGPT, and this time that it had all of the information at once, it gave me completely different set of remedies, and Symphytum was nowhere near in there, because now it was looking at the totality of the information at one time instead of what was given initially. And I did the exact same thing when I moved it over to Gemini and moved it over to Perplexity. No Symphytum in any of them. So it was stuck in that remedy. So you gotta be aware of that possibility. If you're going back and forth with it, it sometimes can be stuck on previous output to influence whatever the new input is. And then another thing, remember I said that it wants to help you, right? So anything that I asked it later, it'll say yes. If you say, okay, well, that's a great remedy. How about this remedy? Oh, yeah, that sounds good. How about this exercise? Yeah, that sounds good. How about if he ate a low-fat, high-carb diet? Oh, yeah, that is shown to be beneficial for some things. It wants to be helpful to you, right? I see someone mentioning Python and someone mentioning about JSON. Yeah, most people don't know Python programming language, I don't know Python programming language. I can read JSON. I don't use JSON, but most people aren't using those. That would be engineers would be using these things. So this is for when people are using natural language, which is what we come to expect when we're using these AI, especially these commercial AIs. So you want to be able to know where you're going to be able to get your best response. Now, I will say, you should not use ChatGPT or any of these AI as the final word on anything. If you do use it, I'm not telling people to use it. I'm saying if you do, and we know people are using it, we know practitioners are using it, we know students are using it, we know patients are using it to look for symptoms and self-diagnose. I'm saying that if you're going to use it, you need to be the final word. The practitioner needs to be the final end-all be-all. You may use it for a starting point for a case. You may use it for just kick some ideas around, some consulting, right? Some introducing ways of brainstorming and thinking. But you do not act on whatever the output is. Because again, like I said before, it can be confidently wrong. It can make up stuff. So we have to be aware of. I'm not saying that it can't be a useful tool, but you have to use it as the tool, and someone has to hold the tool, and that's you. And you have to be the arbiter of whatever is going to be the next action on there. So I want to get that across to you, right? Because I did have, when I did the original post on ChatGPT, the article that I posted on the Lotus Health site, I did get some feedback. People are very much dead set against this AI stuff. It's going to take over the world or whatever. And I understand that, and there is a conversation to be had there. But the point being is that people are using it. It's better to understand how to use it the most responsibly, and if people are going to use it, and to make sure that we know the benefits and the drawbacks, and that for us to always stay in the driver's seat. So that's what I wanted to say there. Not pushing anyone to say this is going to be your new homeopath. It shouldn't be. You should be that person. So that was the case there. So it got stuck on an earlier assumption, on symphytum as an earlier assumption. Like I said, earlier responses can bias later outputs. So we want to make sure we do that. Now, if you do use it for cases, if you do use it for brainstorming and whatnot, you always want to start a new chat per case, because of this chance for, not chance, but it will definitely use earlier responses for present outputs. So if you've got a case that you're brainstorming, always put new cases in new chats, so that, yeah, you don't want to taint it there. Right. So, okay. I hope that makes sense. If that makes sense, let me know if you guys are catching on. If I'm moving too fast here, if you have a question, say something there. If not, we're gonna go in and use one of these prompts on one of these cases here. I'll give you all a second here. Yes, you can give ChatGPT too much information and it gets stuck. Or what you're doing is you're filling up the memory to some degree. And the more you get into it, it pushes up with previous stuff that might have vital context. So if it's extremely long, what I like to do is I would ask it for a full recap of the chat. So then it has a new base to start from. So it has some of that context still there. But I do extremely long chats on a variety of things. So you may not do that if you're doing like a brainstorm of a case or something like that, right? So, okay. So let's go ahead and get to one of these cases. So, like I said, I chose a case study that I found on the internet, and I chose it again so that if anyone wanted to test with the exact same information, it would be readily available for anyone because it's one of these journals. This one is posted on sciencedirect.com, and it is a case study on homeopathic treatment of binge eating in adult males. And I was just looking for whatever was going to do. And another reason why I chose this here is because the person who, or the team that did this case study, let's get down here to the first case one here. You can see they repertorized it with Dr. Murphy's 1998 repertory. I believe that might have been, was that the second edition? It might have been the second edition. So they used Dr. Murphy's repertory in their case study, so I thought it worked really well. So this first case here, right? We've got a case here that we're going to put in, and then we'll go back, and then these are the prompts that are in the prompt pack. We're going to use these that are specifically designed to help with some of this analysis. So let's just look at the first clinical prescribing prompt. This is a basic prompt. It's not extremely detailed, but you can see here's the role. You are a professional homeopath trained in clinical prescribing. There are two versions of this. One where it's trained in classical prescribing, so you may give different responses because there's different ways of looking at it if you're doing clinical or classical. And you're asking for thoughts on the case. So this is just a consultation style prompt. So I just want your thoughts on this case. We want it to identify remedies which might be indicated, and a brief explanation of why, supported by relevant keynotes or commonly observed indications. So we want it to say why. That gives you more information and an idea of the reasons these remedies are put in here, right? So, you can dismiss or whatnot yourself, but it's more helpful in brainstorming here. For this, I had it also add some lifestyle strategies or holistic modalities that could be supportive, like herbs, nutrition, naturopathic practices. And I want these recommendations to be general and educational, but not prescriptive dosing or treatment plans. You shouldn't have AI telling you the dosage and the prescription, right? It shouldn't tell you, 30C 2 times a day. Like, this is up to you. This is what the practitioner needs to know, right? We always want to rely on the human being here. So, and this is definitely something that even Robin would say a lot. There were these, there are programs out there, right? Like repertorizing programs, the free ones. There's Radar and this and that, but you always want to be able to use your own knowledge, use it in your head, know how to go through the books yourself. With AI, it's not a database like those programs, whereas with Radar, that information in there is going to be the information that comes out. AI is not going to give you specifically what was in the training. It's going to generate a response, so it can be a little bit more fallible. It's not a database in that regard. So always have the human the human be the final, and that's you. So the way to use this is you'll just go through, and we're going to copy this prompt, and we'll take that and go into ChatGPT, all right? We'll paste it here, and you see in this part, this is where we put the case details. So we're going to use this case as an example. Now, this is a 28-year-old musician. He's got irregular eating and sleeping patterns. He has a history of eating beyond satiation, going back to childhood memories, habits of eating fast, reaching a frenzy in eating. And you can see in this case, this is a very detailed case. And this is when you're dealing with AI, and it's just like when you're case taking. You want to have as much detail as possible to be able to get the best output possible, right? So he's got, he expresses late night cravings for sweet, rich food, hunger pangs, increased salivation, and slight nervousness in his chest preceding a meal. We can go down and look at some other things here. Long-standing history of erratic sleeping patterns. He sleeps for 9 hours, but then feels tired after waking from maybe oversleep. He has some residual anxiety over sleep, and he perceives this as a major problem. So I know you're listening to this and you can hear keynotes in here. And these are the things that the AI is also going to pick up on. And we'll see that in the output. Right. He sometimes experiences slight dizziness with hot flush sensations and a feeling that his body is pushing out of his skin, and complains of burning sensation when passing a stool, has rectal spasms. The participant also complains of an itching around the skin of his buttocks, and on the examination, he presented with fine, visible tremors in the hands. Now, we would take this full case, and I'm sure some of you have ideas, maybe have some ideas already of what you might suggest. And I'm reading some of it because I don't know how clearly you can see this on the screen, how big it's presenting on the screen, if you can read that. So we would take a copy of this, or in your case, if you're putting your own case, and you're just going to put the case details right here underneath the case details. So now I've got the full thing right here. All right. And we'll just have ChatGPT give us their thoughts on the case based on the criteria in the prompt. And so here we go. So homeopathic considerations, it's giving some of the points, and you see it's pulled out the points from the case. Nervous temperament, excitability, frenzied compulsive eating, desire for sweets and rich foods, digestive bloating, rectal irritation, spasms, the hand tremors it picked up, the restlessness but heavy sleep and unrefreshed mornings, dizziness and flushes of heat. It's giving a suggestion here of a neurodigestive imbalance. And then it's giving some remedy suggestions. Argent night. And then these are the reasons why it chose that. It's saying nervous, hurried impulses, crave sweets. These are keynotes that it's picking up. Trembling from nervousness, anxiety, right? And it's given some other remedies here, lycopodium, nux vomica, and sulfur, right? So these are the remedies that it's choosing based off of what it's seeing in the case that was entered into. Now, I'm not putting this in to say whether or not AI is right or it's not right, but it's to show what kind of information that you will get out of it. Okay. Again, it's up to you and your experience and your training, your research to make the final decisions on whether it's right or not. This is more starting point type of thing if you're using AI at all. It always should be at least just that. And so just as a comparative, in this case, the people who did the case study, they did the repertorization. These are some of the rubrics they used, right? Food, sleep, nerves, skin, itching, mouth, salivation. And they prescribed, well, here's their point. So they came up with arsenicum, ipecac, nux vomica, and sulfur. And they prescribed sulfur LM1 in this case. So of the remedies that they came up with in the case study, ChatGPT came up with sulfur and nux vomica also. They did not pull up arsenicum or ipecac. But the remedy that they ultimately prescribed, it chose as a secondary consideration, but it put it in there. So you can see that it's what kind of output you would get with this. Now, remember I had the other part that had some additional support. And so this is giving some additional things here. Nutrition, eating habits to help, mindful eating, structured rhythm, the 3 regular meals a day, just to slow the pace of the meals, some herbal support, chamomile, probiotics, magnesium-rich foods, stress management, evening wind down ritual, qigong or yoga. We know we love some qigong over here. Regular times of wake up journaling, and then naturopathic and emotional support. Get some daily sunlight, some digital fasts, creative fasts, and then it gave a summary here. Now it's not always going to give this summary table. Again, it's generating things on the fly. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But we've got a table here. Now, a ChatGPT is always asking you if you want it to do something more, right? So this is like, would you like me to outline how you might differentiate between Argent Night, Lycopodium, and Nux vomica if more emotional physical details become available? If that's something you want, then you just type yes, and it starts to spit it out, right? Or you could say, you know, compare sulfur and Nux vomica for this case. What are the fors and against? All right. So now it's going to compare those based on the information that we have. And again, this is for your research. This is for brainstorming, informational. You are the one that's going to make these decisions later on, right? So let's give the reasons for sulfur, right? The tendency to overeat, bloating and fullness, rectal itching and burning, feels worse from heat. And against sulfur, and it's got some things here, the tremors, the sulfur sleep light and disturbed, not heavy and prolonged, and then Nux vomica and for and against. Okay, so you see the example of what I'm talking about here, of this output. So what I want to do is I'm going to take that exact same thing, and it's much more stuff. Overall case assessment, favors sulfur, favors Nux vomica, right? So it looks like about even in certain, so about 5-4 on each side. This one is saying, in this case, the nervous tension and hurried keynotes of Nux vomica, but there's also sulfur. It may represent sulfur. So it's not giving you one or the other, but it's not supposed to necessarily make the judgment. It's for you to make the judgment. It's supposed to give you some information that you're brainstorming off of. So just as an example, I'm going to take the same case, the exact same case, same information, same prompt, and I'm going to put it into Gemini, and we're going to see what information it comes out. Now, Gemini is Google's ChatGPT. If you have a Gmail account or a Google account, you already have access to this. It's also free. Just go to gemini.google.com. And we'll see what we got here. So the remedies it comes up with is Nux vomica, sulfur. Sulfur comes up again. Phosphorus. It gave 3 instead of 4 here. So it gave sulfur, Nux vomica, and phosphorus. And we've got the points of, why it chose what it chose. Right? And then some supportive lifestyle, holistic modalities, mindful eating like the other ones, stress and sleep management. So it's recommending some yoga, some physical activities, some nerve support, herb support, valerian, passion flower, stuff for digestion. So you can see what kind of information you get. And this is the first basic prompt here. But this one also came up with sulfur as one of the remedies, which again is what they prescribed here, right? Sulfur, Nux vomica. So this one also had Nux in it as well. But phosphorus came up here. Let me see, did ChatGPT also have phosphorus? No, it did not. So it gave a different one here. So I'm going to take the same prompt and I'm putting it into Perplexity. Now, if you're not aware, if you've never used Perplexity before, it is also a generative AI like ChatGPT, like Gemini, but it's got a special feature that's geared towards searching. So it's AI-powered search, but it has the same capabilities as some of the other ones, but it can also pull from more results on the internet. And this usually cites sources for whatever information that it gives you. So this is not necessarily exactly what you might use, but it's free to use. You don't have to sign up with an account. You might get an annoying pop-up on the side when you go to use it sometimes. But just use this one because if anyone doesn't have an account in the other ones and they want to try some of this stuff, you can go right here and get access to it immediately. So here you can see it's also pulling up information. It's got its own training, but it's pulling up information from different articles. And it's got 10 different sources here. that it pulled from. And so the remedies it chose, now this chose Lycopodium, Nux vomica, Sepia, Passiflora, Ignatia, Carboveg, or Arsenicum. This one didn't have sulfur at all in its choices. It also gave these suggestive strategies, some dietary changes, some sleep hygiene, winding down before bed, stress management, some herbs like chamomile, valerian. These were suggested before as well. Some vitamin support, physical exercise like yoga or walking. So you got some other points here. But as you see, it's not consistent output, right? If this were a database, it would give you consistent output, right? Consistently the same remedies for the same points you put in. But AI is not like that. It's not how it works. I know a lot of people are adding AI to all of their things. They're adding it to all of their applications and whatnot. But we just have to keep in mind, it's not a database. It can be wrong. It can give different answers. And to show you, let's take that exact same case. Now we looked here. It's argentite, lycopodium, nux vomica, and sulfur in ChatGPT. And let's create a new chat and put the exact same case in the ChatGPT again. This is in a completely new chat. And this came up with argentite, nux vomica. This time it said lachesis, but it came up with sulfur. And it gave reasons why lachesis. So you can see it's not going to, even if you put the same information in the same platform, you could get some different results. Your prompts matter. The input you give matters to it. But again, it's generating these things on the fly. So this is even more of a reason why you have to be the arbiter of truth. You have to be that line in the sand. You have to take, if you use these things, if you use any AI, whether you're using the prompts that I put together or you're doing your own thing, you always have to look at it. Don't blindly trust what it puts out. You use that and you can look at it and be like, okay, well, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Let's move on. And you make your own decisions on that. Does that make sense? Everyone got what I'm talking about here? See if everyone is good. You still with me here? Everyone's still with me on this? See any people in the chat? So what we'll do is we're gonna move it. We're gonna try another case as well. All right. I see you in the chat. Hit sender. Yes, hit is another good one for wellness. Thanks, Barbara. All right. So you ready to move on to another case? We'll do another example with another prompt. So let's go for this time, not the PowerPoint. Let's go back over here. All right, so this one was a basic clinical prescribing prompt, right? What I want to show you is this clinical prescribing, but a structured integrated case analysis prompt. Now this is a little bit more robust, right? So you can see the way that this prompt is structured, right? We're expecting output of, again, your professional homeopath. You want to prioritize conditions linked to indications, keynotes, and commonly observed remedy associations. I want to keep the homeopathic analysis separate from the additional suggestions that we've got at the bottom. I want it to be educational, non-prescriptive. And in the outline, it's going to put out in an outline format. So this can be good for for records, for your brainstorming, for something that's very structured. So I want it to give us the primary physical symptoms with modalities, psychological and emotional indicators, etiological factors and past events, if they're relevant, if they're included. Not all, you might not have some of that. Then give me the remedies that match the case with reasoning and keynotes. Also, give me remedies commonly used for the chief complaint, but don't apply here. You want things that are contraindicated. This is to give you more information, right? To help you decide one way or the other. But again, you never blindly trust any of this stuff. And then here, this is going to give you suggested rubrics for repertorization. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it can make up rubrics. It will probably make up some rubrics. The reason why I included this in here is more for you to use the rubrics as keywords, right? So what it's going to pull out is rubrics that may be applicable, or keywords that may be applicable. The rubrics won't be the same. And so if you look at what the keywords are, it might give you an idea of where you can go look in the book. You see what I'm saying? But I wouldn't go and look for its exact rubric, and I'll show you when we get to it. So we're going to use this prompt here, and we're going to do another case. It's the same in this same case study. He also used the Murphy 1998 repertory. And this is a case of a 35-year-old consultant presented with a history of periodically feeling out of control over his eating habits. Since childhood, has associated food with a sense of consolation and comfort, and he used to have a tendency to snack regularly throughout the day. Let me make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, got it. He leads a sedentary lifestyle, feels overweight. He binges. His binges are preceded by a hollow sensation in the stomach and tickling sensation in the throat, with a feeling that needs to experience interesting and satisfying textures while swallowing. So we've got all sorts of different points here that the AI is going to look at here. So he'll seldom eat to physical discomfort, but will experience sleepiness afterwards. He rarely feels guilt after binging, but will experience a sense of regret prior to and after binging, and is consciously aware that his eating pattern or time of eating is inappropriate. And he considers his diet as healthy overall, except for his late night binges. And he has cravings for bread, starchy foods, salt, averse to offal, and generally he feels better after eating. So I'm sure some of you've got like ideas already. If you got an idea of what they might have prescribed here so far, you can drop that in the chat. He also revealed a proclivity for mountainous regions. He dislikes heat and avoids the sun, prefers the cold and cloudy weather. Also has a suppressed libido, melancholy, and emotional attachment. So we would expect that the psychological and emotional part of the output should pick up this stuff here, right? An emotional attachment to romantic relationships that have ended. And the participant is concerned over some hair loss on his head during the last 2 years. So this is the case that we're going to be looking at here. These are the rubrics they looked at in the Murphy repertory. So food, appetite, hunger, environment, sunlight, mind, melancholy, mind, objective, reasonable, food, eating, constitution, hair loss, etc. And then these are the remedies that they were choosing from: Ignatia, Lycopodium, Natrum, Napmure, Pulsatilla, Sulfur. And they ultimately prescribed Napmure LM1. So let's take this case and we're going to see what the AI comes up with. So we're going to take the full prompt, we'll copy this right out of the PDF. We'll go into a new ChatGPT prompt, drop that in there, and we'll take the full case, and we will replace this part here that says insert case description here, put the case here, and now we're going to get the output from this more structured sort of prompt. So this is how we had it laid out. The primary physical symptoms, right? Binge eating, after eating, sleeplessness, general appetite modalities, hair loss, dislikes heat and sun, sedentary, feels overweight. Psychological, emotional indicators, see, food is comfort, regret before and after binges but rarely guilt, melancholy, suppressed libido, self-control conflict, mild indifference or resignation. So you can see here this can be used as even notes for cases. Etiological factors: early conditioning, never well since childhood, comfort eating habits, sedentary work lifestyle, possible grief or loss in relationships contributes to emotional eating and melancholy tone. And then so the remedies that it chose this time for this case the first one, it put nat mur, as you saw that's what they prescribed. It chose nat mur, calc carb, and ammonium crudum, and lycopodium for this case here. Now remember, this had also the contraindicated ones. So remedies that commonly used for binge eating or emotional eating but are not indicated here. And so it chose ignatia, sulfur, argentite, and pulsatilla. Again, to give you more information, whether it's accurate in your assessment or not is, again, it's up to you to make the final decision on everything. As you see, it's going to give different outputs in different AIs or different runs, so you ultimately have to be the decider. Now here's what I mean about rubrics. So suggested rubrics: mind, right? Ailments for disappointed love. I don't think there's going to be a specific one like that. Dwells on past agreeable occurrences. Desire for company but aversion to consolation. It's going to make up some points in here, but you can use this as keywords because it's pulling keywords out of the case, right? So mind, there is stomach, there's generalities, right? Things are related to sex, and it gives you an idea of where you might want to go start researching and looking. And then additional modalities in this one as well that are non-homeopathic: nutritional support, adaptogenic herbs, ashwagandha, mindful eating practices, movement, qigong or yoga. Yes, we love the qigong in there. Stress regulation, breathing exercises, meditation, and then topical support for hair, scalp massages, natural oils. And this one gives a summary insight. It may not always do that, but it shows nature mur as the foundation, and calcarea or antimonium with constitutional tendencies. So you can see with this prompt what kind of output you get. You get a much more structured output, separated based on physical, psychological, ideological type of factors, and then remedies as well, and then contraindicators. Okay, you guys with me? See what we got here? So let's take the same thing. Now remember, they prescribed nat mur. One of the remedies that it said matches the case is nat mur. Let's go into Gemini and start a new chat in Gemini. New chat, and put the same case, and we'll see what comes up. Okay. Again, here's the structured output: primary physical symptoms, the eating, thermal generalities, psychological points, eating and emotion, mood, melancholy, awareness, regret, consciously aware that eating in time is inappropriate, experience a set of regret prior to and after, but rarely feels guilt. It's pulling out those points in there. Relationships, ideological factors, association of food with consolation and comfort dates back to childhood. While not a distinct trauma, this early conditioning is a key factor. Now, the remedies that it chose: calc carb, nat mur, phosphorus, lycopodium. Again, in the case study, they prescribed nat mur. So it's consistently putting up at least one of the suggested remedies seem to be matching with the case study prescribers. Now, I'm not making a judgment on those homeopaths, but I'm just saying that you can see the output it's giving. In the chat, yes, there is a good point. I find ChatGPT learns our preferences. For you, it says Qigong. For me, it offers similar things that I usually recommend. This is absolutely true. So in my chats, there are a variety of chats talking about Qigong, because I also teach Qigong. We have Qigong materials with Lotus Health, and so it's putting Qigong in there. Sometimes it puts Tai Chi in there. It has, if you've got ChatGPT and you use it regularly, you've got other chats there, it knows some of your preferences. It knows stuff about you. You really want something that's really gonna maybe freak you out. If you use ChatGPT, this is an aside, go into ChatGPT in a new chat and say, with everything you know about me across all of our interactions, please give a detailed description of me. Be as brutal as possible. Be ready for the output. Okay? So it has learned some things about you that you may not be aware that it does know. It picks up some of these things, even if it doesn't store it in its memory. So yes, that's a good point. So for me, it's going to say Qigong because it may say it because that's one of the things that is in my chat history a lot. So let's take this exact same thing and go over to Perplexity and see here. What am I doing? There we go. New one. You saw it. It gave me a pop-up. You just skip out of that. Again, it's free. Here we go. So, again, primary physical symptoms, the binge eating, the post-binge sleepiness, hair loss, dislikes heat, sedentary lifestyle. Here's that pop-up I was telling you about. The psychological indicators, long-standing associations of food with comfort, melancholy, suppressed libido, regret before and after binges but little guilt, self-awareness of inappropriate timing and pattern of eating. So that was one that it picked up on. Never well since. This is a childhood habituation. Possible emotional loss, relationship ending contributes to melancholy and attachment patterns. Sedentary routines and climate preferences. Right. So the remedies that it chose that match this is calc carb, natmur, and antimonium crudum. So it also suggested natmur as one of the remedies in here. And then contraindicated remedies would be sulfur and lycopodium, and then it gives you the reasons why it thinks it's contraindicated. And then here again, we've got some rubrics: stomach, generalities, mind, hair. Again, use these as keywords just to point you in a direction, and not look for these exact rubrics. All right. And then some additional modalities, right? Structured meal timing, bitter tonics, dandelion roots, mindfulness eating practices, moderate exercise, gentle scalp massage, and natural oils. So you see across three different, comparing the same prompt, the same case across three different AIs, there is some overlap in the remedies that it recommends. And in each one, it also chose natmur, which is the same thing that the writers of the case had prescribed for this patient. So just giving you an idea of how these prompts work. All right. Any questions so far? We're about an hour and 15 in. We could do one more prompt if you'd like. How about the acute prompt? There's a structured case analysis with a differential template. Any suggestions? Anything that you see that which one you might want to try out here? And what we'll do is I'll choose another case. There's a case 6 here, and we'll run this through a different prompt so you can get another example. If anyone has any sort of suggestion, if not, I will choose one. And I'm gonna, let me put that back on the screen here. So we use the consultation style prompt where we asked just for suggestions or recommendations. This is a structured, integrated prompt. And there are two flavors of both: clinical, classical, etiological prompt, clinical, classical. The difference would be that it's supposed to take the totality of the case in the classical. We got one for, another prompt, awesome. We got one for emergency, one for acute. Which one should we choose? Well, on the acute prompt, let's take a look at the acute prompt. So I've got it, again, here's the role. You're a professional homeopath trained in clinical prescribing. Please analyze the following acute case and suggest possible remedies. We want the analysis to give the chief complaint and onset. Give modalities. Note what makes the condition better or worse. Acute versus chronic background. Indicated remedies. Give me 2 to 4 remedies and give keynotes, modalities, and distinguishing features from the similar remedies. Give differentials, things that don't apply, and then of course give some adjunct support. That's in the acute prompt. In the emergency prompt, so the emergency prompt is here. Again, here we have the role. You're a professional homeopath trained in emergency and first aid prescribing. Please analyze the following acute case. Clarify the details. Before giving remedy suggestions, see this one here, I may go with the acute because since we're using an example case from this case studies, because this one asks for 3 to 5 clarifying questions first. So what would happen here is you put the prompt in and you put your case information, and then you run the prompt. It will probably ask you 3 to 5 clarifying questions that you would then enter in, and then it would give you an analysis, because it might say, okay, maybe you put in something and it's trying to find which keynote that it's looking for, so it might ask you one way or the other to help it decide which remedies to suggest here. So in this one, you've got that type of interaction. It's also in the children's prompt too, where it asks for their clarifying questions. So then it asks for the nature of it's going to give examples. What's the nature of the event? How sudden was the onset? What's the current emotional mental state? Are there any visible changes? We don't have this information for the example case here, so maybe we won't use this one, but this is in the pack. And then what it'll do is it'll provide remedy analysis. Type of emergency or trauma to define the event, location and nature of condition, which summarize the affected area and symptom, give you some indicated remedies, 2 to 3 remedies that best fit, differentials and exclusions, and then adjunct support. So let's go with the acute prompt since we don't have to do the follow-up. Yes. I see a question in here. After getting initial suggestions, we can ask the chatbot more details to clarify about the medicine or the disease. Yes, you absolutely can. Again, you are the final word on it. We never want to trust the output out of there. This is a brainstorming tool. This is a starting point tool. It's something to help get your thinking right. Right? The ultimate diagnosis, the ultimate prescribing comes down to the practitioner. I just want to make that clear. So, okay, let's go with the acute prompt. So we're going to take this prompt. We're going to go into ChatGPT and get us another new case, another new window. And then this case here. This is a case, 6 in their case study. This is a 23-year-old journalist presented with a dietary habit of eating the majority of his food at night. The participant's appetite is very low in the mornings and only increases during the day as a result of boredom, without the physical sensation of hunger. At night, he tends to be hungrier. He describes himself as a thirsty person, avoids the sun whenever possible. His sleeping is erratic. He often wakes up unrefreshed. Over the weekends, he tends to indulge in inordinate amounts of alcohol. He has a history of recurring sinusitis with accompanying headaches extending to his right eye. It is noteworthy that the participant seemed reticent to disclose information freely and asked many questions about the prescribed remedy and its possible side effects. So again, another pretty detailed case here. And then these are rubrics that they looked at for repertorization: food, mind, environment, skin, and they were choosing between carb, lacosis, lycopodium, and sulfur, and ultimately chose lacosis LM1 to prescribe. So let's drop that case into our prompt with ChatGPT. And this is the acute. And we're going to look here. Okay. Main complaint: disordered appetite characterized by nocturnal hunger, postprandial increase of appetite, and binge eating with regret. Onset: gradual, behaviorally reinforced, related to irregular lifestyle. Yeah, the late night eating, the alcohol use, the erratic sleep. Secondary symptoms: morning anorexia, thirstiness, avoidance of sun, unrefreshed sleep, and periodic sinusitis with right-sided headache. And then so some of the modalities: aggravation, night after eating, increased hunger, amelioration. The acute versus the chronic background. This is a chronic behavioral pattern with occasional acute consequences. So it picked up on this being a chronic instead of an acute. And it indicated lycopodium, nux vomica, calc carb, or sulfur. Now they prescribed lachesis. They also had sulfur, and they had lycopodium and calc carb, but they chose lachesis. It did not. The AI did not choose lachesis, not even in the differentials. But you can see some of the information that it's outputting here, right? Adjunct support as well, and then a brief summary at the end. Now here it's asking if you'd like it to include potential dosage and recommendations. I don't do that. I purposely did not put dosage in there. Again, I think that should be left up to the practitioner. That's your experience. So yeah. No, this case is not an acute case. It's not a good one for an acute. We're just using the prompt here. You can see it picked it up that it sounded more like it was a chronic case and not an acute case. I didn't have any acute cases. I didn't see any in the case study. So it's going to look at it from that lens, even though it's not an acute. So let's take a look at the same prompt in Gemini. We're going to do another new chat over here. Gemini, same information. See if it also picks up that this seems like a chronic case and not. Again, good. This picked up. This case presents with a mixture of acute and chronic elements, but the most pressing issue seems to be a pattern of disordered eating and accompanied emotional state. So even though this is an acute prompt, it did recognize that this description was more of a chronic type of case. So if you had an acute, it would be more suited for this acute prompt if you had that case here. Let's see what we got in the chat here. Would not have chosen lachesis. Well, that's they chose lachesis. Maybe I don't know if you're in line with what ChatGPT chose. Maybe that's why ChatGPT didn't choose that one. But you can see here in Gemini, acute versus chronic background. Again, it outlined this is a chronic pattern. There's some acute exacerbations, but it notified that recognized that this is a more chronic than acute. And it chose, let's see, what remedies? The remedies that it suggested: Ignatia, Natmur, Lycopodium, Nux vomica. So it also did not choose lachesis, which is what they chose in the case study. It brought up Lycopodium, which I believe ChatGPT also recommended. They had Lycopodium, they had Nux vomica, they had calc carb. This one did have Lycopodium and Nux vomica. So they're in more agreement on a couple of other remedies. Differentials, pulsatilla, sulfur, and phosphorus. And then some adjunct support here. So let's take the same thing and go into Perplexity and see if any of them came up with lachesis that the case writers came up with. So I'll let it do its thinking. Yes, hi Richard. Yes, the recording will be available. Making the recording available for free. It will be up within a couple of days after this, I'm either going to put it up on this YouTube channel or up on our Vimeo channel, or maybe both, but it will be up and available for free. So if you missed the beginning, or if you need to go back and want to go back again, then yeah, don't worry about it. It's all good. Okay, so well, now Perplexity has given us something else. It says let's analyze this acute case step by step. Let's look at the chief complaint. What do you think the main symptoms are? This will help us link symptoms effectively. So this is trying to ask me questions instead of just giving me output, which this is the first time I've seen this. So again, sometimes it's going to give you different things. So let's say here, I'm going to say that we're an experienced prescriber. See what kind of output it's going to give here. So, chief complaint: disturbed dietary habit, predominant night eating, low morning appetite. There's a history of recurring sinusitis. Again, this is not, the case is not an acute case. We're putting a chronic case into an acute prompt. But if you had it, it would pick up on the acutes. So here, acute versus chronic background. The acute symptoms of binging, hunger, cycle, sinusitis, headaches overlay a chronic pattern of irregular appetite, sinus issues, lifestyle factors, and erratic sleep. Indicated remedies: pulsatilla, lycopodium, natmur, sulfur. Again, no lachesis. Differentials: nux vomica, belladonna or aconite, arsenicum, and then adjunct support. So this is to give you an example of the type of data that will come out, right? What you're going to receive when you use a different prompt for different cases. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes Perplexity, I just never seen it when I've used these prompts, but it's not a bad thing actually. For it to ask questions like that, because what it was, in asking a question, it would probably tailor how it responded to you, whether it's more complex in its wording or if it's more basic so you understand it. So it's not a bad point to have in there. But you can see, as an example, just what some of the output looks like from some of these prompts. And again, we have an emergency prompt, have a children's healthcare prompt. This one will also ask you clarifying questions. Something for cell salts, and then a miasm prompt that asks for chief complaints, psychological, emotional indicators, etiological, miasmic assessment, remedies aligned with the miasm, differentials, and then adjunct support as well. So all of those are inside this prompt pack, and this is available right now on the lotushealthinstitute.com store. And in the email that you should have received already, I see some people have not have received and some haven't. If you haven't, check your spam folder. I will check again after this is over to make sure it went out. So in there will be the discount code that'll give you an extra 10% off. It's already going to be discounted at launch, but we're going to give an extra 10% for everyone who signed up. The email's gone out already. There should be a follow-up email in a couple of days that will also have it, but I'm going to check to make sure if you haven't received it. All right, I see some people have, but it came from us, so it should be there. But if it's not, I'll check on that. All right, so those were the cases that we went through just to show you how some of these prompts work, and to also just give you some background on how ChatGPT or the Gen AI works, some of the good, some of the bad. And let's do a follow-up here, this wrap-up before we finish, just to let you know, I know people have visceral reactions to the AI. Some love it, some hate it, some think it's the devil, some think it's gonna be great. It's here regardless, right? People are using it, patients are using it, practitioners are using it, students are using it. So it's best for us to know how it works and what are some of the pitfalls. and to be able to recognize some of the issues so that we can either use it most effectively ourselves, or we can guide people who are using it, especially in a situation where you're prescribing to people and people are looking for your consultation. Okay. So the templates that are in that pack, use those templates and your judgment to give you the insight, right? Or to help you brainstorm, or to help you get as a starting point. AI should always be a supportive tool and not a substitute for you. That's absolutely it. So that's all I've got for today. I hope it was very informational. If you have any questions, I'll take a few minutes for a couple of questions before we end off the stream here. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people saying they haven't received the email yet. Don't worry about it. I'm going to check. I'm going to check on that and try to make sure it went out. Another question, do I know of any AI software in development that is more targeted towards homeopaths? I have heard of some that are in development. And I believe also tools like Radar and others like that are going to start implementing, maybe. They might implement some AI tools in there. And they will be good. Again, none of what I've said here will... everything I've said here will still apply, even if it is a tool that came out that's specifically for AI. The way that generative AI works is not the same as a database. So it's going to be confidently wrong, regardless if it's trained only on homeopathy or if it's trained on a variety of things. There are going to be points where it is confidently wrong. We should never, ever use it as a substitute for your own judgment, your own training, your own understanding, right? In any of the case. Now, there'll be different uses for it, right? Depends on how they implement it, right? Say it's in a repertory program and it uses the regular repertory database style that you're used to give you, selections of remedies. And then it uses AI to summarize that. That's a different type of a use case that can also be helpful, right? So it depends on how it's useful, but you always want to be the one that makes the final decision. You wouldn't take whatever ChatGPT or Gemini gives you, or whatever software it's incorporated in. You wouldn't take that and then go right to the patient with it. You always have to be that main line. ChatGPT helped me narrow down an acute remedy when all other well-chosen remedies failed. I have so many differentials. I was grateful. Yes, Susie, it's good. And that's kind of point of some of the prompts here. To give you more information, to help you brainstorm on some things. Maybe it picked up on something that you might have missed that it's going to spit out, right? That's part of the point why I put in some of these where it gives you recommended remedies and then remedies that weren't indicated and give reasons why, so that it gives you more information, so that you can have as much information as you need to make the decisions that you want to make. Okay. Any other questions? So I know people. I'm sure we've already seen one comment here. Someone has used it for research. Use this with practical homeopathy. Focus on the Boehner protocols. Okay. So in the prompt pack, if you pick this up and you start using these prompt packs, do me a favor. You can send some feedback. If there's a prompt that I may have missed that you would think, oh, I wish there was a prompt for this specific approach, send me an email. I can take a look at that, maybe put a structured prompt together, add it into the prompt pack, and then it gets sent out. I'll send it out to everyone as well, right? So anyone who purchases it gets updates for free. So if I add some more or revise some, then I'll send that out to everyone else. So if you've got a suggestion of a prompt that you want to see that's not in there, then send that, and maybe we can help everybody else with it as well. All right. Okay, so if that's all, I appreciate everyone that joined today, everyone that signed up. I'm going to check on that email to make sure it went out to you. In the email will be the discount code, but also be the link to download the handout that has the conversation that I had versus Ipecac versus Cantharis, where I bullied it into going one way, and that's to show you that if you kind of put opinions into your prompts, it's going to assume that this is the output you want, and it's going to give you that type of output. So you want to stay as unbiased as possible, stick to the facts to get the best that you can get out of it. You know, so to be a link to that in there, and then of course the article that I mentioned as well. All right. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for coming in, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your weekend. All right, take care.